Naming binary ionic compounds. Binary ionic compounds are simple compounds because they only contain two elements. That's what binary means. So this means two. An ionic means that we have a metal and a nonmetal. So there's two elements only, and one is a metal, one is a nonmetal. When naming these simple ionic compounds, the first part of the name is the metal. So the first part of the name comes from the metal. The second part of the name comes from the nonmetal, and it is changed, its ending is changed to IDE. So oxygen becomes oxide, sulfur becomes sulfide, phosphorus becomes phosphide, chlorine becomes chloride, and so on. So, an example, CaCl2. This is calcium chloride. Just the name of the metal followed by the nonmetal IDE ending. The second the second compound is sodium oxide. There are absolutely no prefixes used in this type of naming. It's simply the metal ion followed by the nonmetal anion. There's two ways to figure out what the formula is for a simple binary ionic compound. There's the crisscross rule, or the cross and drop rule, and there is the zero-sum rule. So let's look at the cross and drop rule first. For the cross and drop rule, you're going to need your periodic table, and you're going to need to know your charges for your ions. So, sodium, the element is Na, and oxygen is O. So you write the charges above the elements, and when you do the cross and drop rule, you cross and drop just the numbers. So now the formula is Na2O. You need two sodiums. Zinc sulfide. Zinc is 2+, and sulfur is 2-. Here, when you cross and drop, you end up with Zn2S2. You always reduce the subscripts. So here you would reduce it to Z, N, and S. 2 goes into both of those numbers. So you have to reduce it, and it reduces to a whole number. So potassium chloride. This would be K and Cl. Cl is -1, potassium is +1, so when you cross and drop, you end up with both subscripts being 1, and we don't write 1s, so your formula is just KCl. That's pretty straightforward, but it's easy to make mistakes when you get into more complicated polyatomic ions and multivalent metals. So the zero-sum rule will give you the right answer each time. So for the zero-sum rule, the charges on the cation have to equal the total charge on the negative anions, because the charge, the total net charge on any compound is 0. So sodium oxide. Sodium has a charge of +1. Oxygen has a charge of -2. The bigger number here is 2. What do I have to multiply sodium by to get +2? You have to multiply it by 2. 2 times +1 is +2. If I add that to the negative side, I end up getting 0. Whatever number you multiply by, this becomes your subscript. So your answer is Na2O. Zinc sulfide. Zinc is +2. Sulfur is -2. If you add these up, it already adds to 0, so you do not change the formula. Same rules apply here. Potassium is +1, chlorine's -1. They already add up to 0, so the formula stays as it is. Calcium chloride. Calcium has charge of +2, while chlorine's is -1. They do not add to 0. 2 is the bigger number, so I would have to multiply my -1 by 2 to get -2, which is equal to +2. So if I add these two numbers together, I get 0. I multiplied by 2, so that is my subscript. So my answer is CaCl2. Whichever element you have to multiply, that is the number that ends up with a subscript.